Ready to really level up your English listening skills?
Yo, yeah.
Today we're diving deep into a lesson
Okay.
that's all about using podcasts to boost your English, especially for those of you who are at that intermediate level.
Right.
We're going to be looking at some practical phrases
Cool.
and some really great active listening techniques.
Love it.
So by the end of this deep dive, you'll feel way more confident navigating all kinds of English audio.
Right.
And you'll be ready to put all these tips into action.
The best part is it uses something you probably already enjoy, listening to podcasts.
Right.
And turns it into like a super powerful learning tool.
I love it.
Yeah.
So let's jump right in
Okay.
to some of the phrases from this lesson. We'll be focusing on pronunciation, the meaning of the phrases, and how you might actually use them in conversations.
Sounds good.
Repetition is key.
Yes.
So don't be shy about saying these out loud as we go. Okay, first up, we have the phrase, the other one was better. Now think about where you would naturally emphasize this sentence. Where does the stress fall?
It's subtle, but I think the stress falls on better.
Right.
The other one was better.
Yes. Perfect.
Yeah.
Now imagine you're comparing two movies that you've seen.
Okay.
How would you use this phrase in a sentence?
You could say something like, I saw both movies, but the other one was better.
Yeah.
You're just directly, stating your preference.
Right. And this is such a key element of English.
Yeah.
It's comparing things.
Yeah.
Right. You can use this structure, the other one was, with all sorts of adjectives.
Oh, totally.
Like more interesting, funnier, less expensive.
Yeah.
You can use all different kinds of adjectives.
Right. And don't be afraid to experiment with different adjectives to expand your vocabulary.
Absolutely. Okay. Moving on, let's look at a phrase that's all about getting more information.
Okay.
Do you have anything else to tell me? What you notice about that phrase?
I noticed that the voice naturally rises at the end.
Yes.
Making it a clear question, like intonation is so important in English.
Absolutely.
So yeah, you need to pay attention to those rising and falling tones.
Now, how could you use this phrase if, for example, you were at the doctor's office?
Well, like after the doctor explains, your diagnosis, you might ask, do you have anything else to tell me?
Yeah.
Just to make sure you understand everything.
Right. That's a great example.
Yeah.
And this phrase is perfect for politely requesting additional information.
Totally.
In all kinds of situations.
Exactly. It shows that you're engaged.
Right.
And that you want to be fully informed.
Okay. Now, for a phrase that's a little bit more assertive.
Okay.
Give me another reason. So imagine you're having like a friendly debate with a friend.
Right.
How would you use that phrase?
This phrase is like your way of saying, hey, I need more convincing.
Yeah.
You're politely challenging them to provide more justification for their point.
I love that. And it's a great example of directness in English communication. It's not considered rude to directly ask for more evidence or support for someone's claim.
In fact, it can even show that you're taking the conversation seriously.
Yeah.
And want to understand their perspective fully.
Yes. Okay. Ready for a phrase that deals with the future?
Sure.
Listen to this. The other option will be better. Notice how the word will emphasizes certainty about the future.
Exactly. You're expressing strong confidence that the alternative choice will indeed be superior.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very useful in discussions about plans or predictions.
So imagine you're planning a trip with friends and you're discussing different destinations.
Okay.
How could you use this phrase?
You might say, I know this destination is popular, but I think the other option will be better.
Yeah.
It has more of the activities we enjoy.
Perfect. All right. Now, here's a phrase that might resonate with many of you. I have trouble when it comes to speaking English.
Yeah, it's a common feeling for language learners.
Yeah.
And it's important to be able to, articulate those challenges.
Right.
This phrase pinpoints the specific area where you're facing difficulty.
Yeah. And it also demonstrates this phrase when it comes to.
Yes.
Which is so common in English.
Oh, yeah.
It helps to narrow down the topic and make your meaning super clear.
Right. You could also say, I have trouble when it comes to understanding fast speech, or I have trouble when it comes to using phrasal verbs.
Great examples. Let's switch gears to a lighter phrase.
Okay.
Don't get into trouble.
This one is often used in like a playful or caring way. Like a warning or just like gentle advice.
Like a parent saying that to their kid.
Yeah, exactly.
Before they go out with friends or something.
Yeah, think of a parent saying this to their child before they go out with friends.
Right, and it really highlights a cultural aspect of English.
Yeah.
Where You know direct warnings or advice is perfectly acceptable.
Right.
Now let's practice using it in a different context.
Okay.
Imagine you're giving a friend advice about traveling to a new city. What could you say?
You could say something like, have fun on your trip, but don't get into trouble.
Exactly. Okay, one last phrase before we move on. Listen closely.
Okay.
I had a lot of trouble when taking the bus. So this sentence is using the past tense
Yeah.
to describe a difficult experience. And it also demonstrates the use of a gerund
Right.
taking after the preposition when.
Yes. This is a common pattern in English.
Yeah.
It's worth paying attention to.
So imagine you're telling a friend about a frustrating experience you had.
Okay.
How would you use this phrase?
You could say, I had a lot of trouble when taking the bus yesterday. It was so crowded and I couldn't figure out which stop to get off at.
Oh, that's a great example.
Yeah.
Now, before we dive into some powerful listening tips from this lesson, what stands out to you from these phrases we've practiced so far?
I think what's interesting is how these phrases demonstrate common grammatical structures and pronunciation patterns.
Yeah.
Like by actively engaging with them, you're not just learning vocabulary, you're internalizing how English works.
It's like cracking the code of the language.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So now that we've laid that foundation, let's explore some powerful listening tips from this lesson that can help you level up your English comprehension even further.
Okay. So the first tip focuses on the power of passion. It says, elige temas que te apasionen.
Okay.
Which basically means choose podcast topics that genuinely interest you.
That makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, if you're hooked on the content, you're naturally going to be more engaged and motivated to understand what's being said.
Cool.
Think about it. Like, if you love learning about history, you'd probably be more eager to listen to a podcast about, I don't know, ancient civilizations than one about, like, the stock market.
Totally. Yeah. And that natural interest makes the learning process feel less like a chore and more like an enjoyable exploration.
I love that.
It's a simple but powerful shift in mindset.
So think about your favorite hobbies or areas you're curious about.
Yeah.
There are literally tons of English podcasts out there.
Oh, yeah.
Covering every topic imaginable.
Okay. The next tip is all about active listening.
Okay.
It says, escucha y repite frases cortas.
Okay.
Which means listen and repeat short phrases.
Right.
It's like a classic technique, but for good reason.
Yeah, it's like hitting the pause button on the podcast and having like a mini conversation with yourself.
Right.
You hear a phrase, you pause it, you try to repeat it out loud.
Yes.
Paying attention to the pronunciation, intonation, rhythm.
Exactly. It's a fantastic way to engage with the language on like a deeper level.
Remember those phrases that we practiced earlier?
Oh, yeah.
Those are perfect for this exercise.
Totally. And the more you do it, the more comfortable you'll become with the sounds and patterns of English speech.
It's like building muscle memory for your ears.
Right.
I love that.
Okay. The next tip encourages us to become active listeners in a different way.
All right.
It says, hazte preguntas sobre lo que escuches.
Okay.
So ask yourself questions about what you're listening to.
Don't just let the words wash over you. Engage with them.
Right.
Ask yourself questions like, what was the main point the speaker just made? Or what did they mean by that particular phrase?
Yeah, it's like turning the podcast into a dialogue.
Right.
You're not just a listener anymore.
Yeah.
You're actively participating.
Yes.
In a mental conversation with the speaker, analyzing their words and ideas.
And by asking those questions, you're strengthening your comprehension. And making the information more memorable.
Now, here's a tip that's all about expanding your horizons.
I'm ready.
It says, escucha frecuencias de habla variadas.
Okay.
Which means listen to various speech frequencies.
Oh, this is so important. This means stepping outside your comfort zone.
Right.
And exploring the amazing diversity of English accents and dialects.
Yes, don't limit yourself to just one type of English.
Yeah.
There's a whole world of pronunciations and rhythms out there.
Think about it.
Yeah.
English is spoken all over the world.
Right.
And each region has its own unique flavor.
Exactly. By listening to podcasts from different countries and with hosts from diverse backgrounds, you're training your ear to adapt to these variations.
It's like taking your listening skills to the gym and working out different muscle groups. It might feel challenging at first, but it'll make you a stronger and more versatile listener in the long run.
All right. And the final tip might be a bit controversial.
Let's hear it.
It says, usa subtítulos solo si es necesario.
So use subtitles only if necessary.
Now we know subtitles can be tempting.
Oh, yeah, especially when you're first starting out.
Yeah.
But relying on them too heavily can actually hinder your listening progress.
Right. The key here is to challenge yourself to rely on your ears as much as possible.
Yes, think of it as a puzzle.
Okay.
You have all the pieces, the words, the intonation, the context, and your job is to put them together.
Yeah.
And create a complete picture.
And if you get stuck, it's okay.
You can always rewind and listen again.
Yeah.
Or use subtitles as a last resort.
Right.
But pushing yourself to listen without that crutch will do wonders for your comprehension skills.
It's like training your ear to become more independent and resourceful.
Right.
So we've got 5 powerful tips to add to our toolkit.
Yeah.
But the real work begins now. How can we put this knowledge into practice?
Right.
And make these tips a part of our daily English routine? Yeah. That's the key question, right? Knowledge is only powerful when we actually put it into action.
Yeah. And the lesson reminds us that improving listening is a process.
Yeah.
Requires time.
Absolutely.
And constant practice.
No magic shortcut to fluency.
No.
It's all about making English listening a regular habit.
Right.
And embracing that journey.
And think about it like any other skill that you want to develop.
Right.
It takes consistent effort and dedication.
And remember, every time you listen to English, even if you don't understand every single word, you're still training your ear and absorbing new vocabulary. It all adds up over time.
It really does. So let's talk about some practical ways to integrate English listening into your daily routine.
Okay.
The lesson had a great suggestion, it says.
What's that?
Escucha nuestros episodios at English Learning Podcast y otros podcasts que piensas en.
So listen to our episodes on at English Learning Podcast and other podcasts that interest you.
Yeah, it's all about finding content that speaks to you, something that makes you excited to tune in.
Of course, whether it's news, comedy, true crime, interviews, anything.
Anything.
There's an English podcast out there for everyone.
And remember that tip about choosing topics you're passionate about?
Yeah, that's a good one.
It's a game changer.
Totally, when you're genuinely interested in what you're listening to.
Yeah.
The learning process just becomes so much more enjoyable.
It's like the difference between reading a textbook and having like a really captivating conversation.
Yeah.
One feels like work.
Right.
The other just feel like this natural exchange of ideas.
I like that.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's revisit that thought-provoking question from the lesson.
Okay.
Think about a time you struggled to understand something in English. How could you apply one of the tips we discussed to approach that situation differently?
That's such a valuable exercise.
It is.
Because it encourages us to reflect on our own experiences and identify areas for growth.
So think back to that moment.
Yeah.
Could you have paused and repeated the phrase?
Right.
Asked yourself some clarifying questions.
Yeah.
Or just embraced the fact that maybe you didn't understand everything and just kept listening anyway.
Every listening experience, even the challenging ones,
for sure,
offers valuable lessons.
Embrace those moments as opportunities to learn and grow.
Exactly. And remember, you're not alone on this journey.
Right.
There's a whole community of English learners out there.
Yes.
All facing similar challenges. And supporting each other along the way.
So keep exploring.
Keep practicing.
And celebrate every step forward.
Yes.
In your language journey.
You got this.
You got this.
Thank you for joining us today on English Learning Podcast. I want to congratulate you for taking the time to improve your English. Every step counts, so keep moving forward and don't stop. If you enjoyed this content and want to learn more, make sure to subscribe and hit the like button so we can keep creating videos like this. Let us know in the comments what level of English you're at and what topics you'd like us to cover in the next episode. Also, check out the links in the description for additional resources to help you keep advancing. See you in the next video. And remember, English Learning Podcast is here to help you reach your English goals. Keep learning.